Hello, and welcome to another New Catholic Generation movie review. I'm your host, David. I was gone for a few videos, but it's good to be back. And I'm here with Renee from Reborn Pure. Mark, our special guest, he has now completed his tour of being on a panel when everyone else has not been on.
That's right!
Not Ned or Joe this time.
Yeah, you've never been on a panel with me.
I've always had a panel where I've been on with Joe. This is my first one without Joe, my first one with Renee. Oh my goodness. I did not realize that.
And then we have Saida, our production manager. So, we just went and saw the film Lady Bird. Now, this is a film that came out a few weeks ago in limited release. We originally weren't sure we were going to review it. It took us a while. Things couldn't quite get lined up behind the scenes, but then we got a ton of requests in the comments saying, you gotta go see this film. You gotta go review it. And it's been getting a lot of hype. It recently broke the record for the most reviews on a Rotten Tomatoes 100% score. And it's considered to be either the front runner or in the running for a lot of major Oscar categories such as Best Picture, Best Director, Best Leading Actress, among others. So, now that we've seen it, what did you think? Saida?
It was, I don't know, I felt like I was underwhelmed. I don't think that I hated it. But I just kind of like, the trailers seemed like it was going to be more like, I don't know, just a bit more like intense. And it's not that there weren't a lot of heavy themes to discuss and a lot of, like actual teenage life troubles that were addressed. Mm-hmm. Like there was a lot that was very realistic. Not necessarily to my life, but like I've talked to a lot of people who have gone through a lot of the things that the girl goes through in the movie. And I know that it's semi-autobiographical of the director from when she was a teen. So like it was very real. I just kind of, to me, like I could tell that it really felt like an indie film. It's like one of those ones that you watch it and you're like, oh, that's so thought-provoking, or that's so beautifully shot, but I'm probably not going to rewatch it like all the time.
The people behind this, did you hear them? After
yes.
They're like, oh, that's not a... What
two-timer.
That's not a two-timer. So this is lady right behind me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the rewatchability factor in this movie is not high.
Well, what did you think, Mark?
It's very similar. I was very underwhelmed. I actually I'm verging on the line of not liking it. I don't know. There's just like things about it. Realistic was a very good word, because I feel like I would know people like this. I think one of the issues that I had was they did tackle a lot of issues, but either they dropped them, they were never resolved, or there was a laugh. Like the setup was for a laugh, not an actual issue. And I have a big problem with that. Because it was a funny movie, but it was kind of my sense of humor, because it was very dark humor. We'll talk more about it later in the video.
I'm sure. Renee, what did you think?
I liked it, and I absolutely hated it, and I liked it again, and I was absolutely overwhelmed. I don't know how these people but I would definitely not watch it twice, because I would probably emotionally die and fall flat on my face. Because I don't know. In my mind, they perfectly captured the mundaneness of, being at that age. And yeah, there's not that many exciting things for like a really got you on the edge of your seat movie. And then it does bring up these issues where they don't completely resolve them. They just kind of drop, or, and that is, like I said, realistic. Like, lots of things come and go in our lives, and we can't handle all of them, or we just really are kind of like an observer and can't do much about it, and just time keeps going, and she goes off to college and whatnot. And But I walked out thinking, like, this was magnificent. Like, I actually was crying at parts of this movie.
Really?
Yes, I was actually, like, maybe 60% of the movie I was crying.
I was sitting right next to her.
Holding up tears, like my head was like this, because I was like, I don't want to make it to run down my face, because then I'll go out into the movie theater and be like, and everyone will be like, it's okay, and I'll be like, really? Well, it was good.
There was only a couple parts where I could see like the tears being there, but like
they're probably there. Like,
yeah,
for sure.
Like only a couple parts, like the end scene. Yeah, you have to have a heart.
Almost teary-eyed at the very last scene.
That was the end was when I completely lost. my brain works too sometimes. I see things that remind me of other things that might not even be specifically like from my life at all, but they're just similar enough that I start thinking about this particular thing with me, and then I like, I don't know.
David?
Well, I guess it's funny in that I don't think any of us fully knew what we thought of it, but now that it's all come out on camera, I guess we've got the table that was underwhelmed and the table of more positive reaction. I loved this film, actually.
I did too. Okay,
I thought it was amazing.
Hated it. I loved it.
So the thing with, like, again, I think...
Perfect pairing.
I think some of the thoughts over here is that you felt it was overhyped. And that's something where, like, with Rotten Tomatoes scores, especially since it's such a binary thing, where they either categorize the review as I thought it was good or I thought it was bad, not like good versus amazing or bad versus awful. I think something like, 100%, it basically means that no reviewer who saw it hated it. So is it the best film of all time? No. But when I finished watching it, I was like, I can't give the film a negative review, even if I wanted to. I thought it was really well done.
I probably could.
Right, but the thing is that, like, I was the one who initially brought it to your attention. And I was like, I loved the trailer. I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so great. We should totally review it. And then you're just like, eh. And then we got, like, a ton of requests for it. Yeah. So, like, I feel like if anything, I went in, like, hoping for, like, the best outcome. And then I left, like, I don't know that I hate it. I don't know that I love it. Like, I just almost don't even have an actual opinion because it was just too neutral to me.
Okay, well, I got opinions. So if you want me to talk, I can talk. Okay, so so the plot of this story is about this girl. She's a senior in high school. Her name is Christine, but she doesn't really like her name. She instead prefers to go by Ladybird, to the point where whenever it comes up in school, she'll, like, cross it out. Like when she's cast in the school play and they list all the names, she'll cross out Christine, she'll write Ladybird. And the film deals with a ton of different themes about her growing up. It deals with her frustration of growing up in Sacramento. She doesn't like Sacramento. She thinks it's boring. She wants to live in somewhere like New York. That's where she wants to go to college. She wants to be where the culture is.
Which is a big plot point because it does take place after 9/11.
Yes, it takes place in 2002. So that's like where her mother is like making the argument, oh, it's where terrorism happens. It's dangerous, but she still wants to go there. And actually, as somebody who grew up in Northern California, there were some scenes where it's talking about Sacramento that it actually reminded me a lot of things I felt growing up. Not that, like, I hated Sacramento. I didn't grow up in Sacramento. I grew up in a town that's kind of close to Sacramento. It was a little town that basically nobody would know about north of San Francisco. And yeah, when I would tell people when I came to college where I'm from, I wouldn't say the town I came from. I would say San Francisco or a nearby place because that's where people would know. And I feel bad for Sacramento watching this film because whenever you drive through California, you always go through San Francisco because that's on, like, the main highway. I feel Sacramento is an underrated town. So I did like that theme. The other themes the film goes into is the girl's struggle with trying to figure out her friend's social group, whether to hang with her best friend or to try to go after the popular girls, all the drama that happens with her relationships. She goes through a couple, and there's different problems that happen in each one. But at the heart of everything is the relationship with her mother. It's one that's very strained, and there's a lot of tension that happens between the two characters as to trying to figure out how to communicate, how to get along, and basically how to like and love one another. So on any one of those themes, did you guys have thoughts?
Yeah, one particular line she said, it's like, I know you love me, but do you like me? And
yeah.
It's like, whoa. Like, I mean, I think that goes through maybe a lot of, like, little girls' minds or even little boys as well. Like,
yeah, because that's a big
Your parent loves
thing.
you, you get it, but you guys just don't see eye to eye on so much. You maybe have the thought, like, if we were, like, people of the same age at the same time, like, would we be friends? Like, probably not. Our interests are so opposite. So she's like, Mom, do you even like me? Or,
well, right, it's
I know
because
you love me, but, like, would we be friends or something?
Like, in your family, it's sort of an obligation to love them because, like, yeah, you're a kid, you can't get rid of your kid, but, like, if you weren't my parent, would you like me?
Yeah, I grew up hearing, we're family, we don't have to like you, but we'll always love you. And so I did kind of relate to that theme of wondering, well, would we?
although I did like that scene, what I found to me was probably like out of the three things that you brought up, that the part that I felt most affected by was the concept of ownership of one's name.
Yeah.
Because your name kind of defines who you are. And she didn't feel like she was Christine. She felt that she was Lady Bird. And I think that led to a lot of the divisions, a lot of like the whole like, you gave me this name, Mom, and you might, you know, like Christine, but I'm not Christine, I'm Lady Bird. So like, do you like Lady Bird? Do you like who I am? And that I felt like was really interesting, especially like with the end sequence when she finally calls home and says, "Hey, Mom and Dad, it's Christine." And she finally takes ownership of her name. She finally accepts that she loves her hometown, that she loves her parents, that she loves who she is, even though she's a wreck, even though she's so different from her family. Despite all of these things, I felt like the moment when she really owned her name was like probably the whole point of the film in general, because like who you are, like your name kind of does define who you are, especially in my life experience, because I have such a different name.
I don't know what you're talking about. I know a whole bunch of the apple ciders.
Apple ciders?
But that's like that. Talking about my name is like what does it mean? Where does it come from? Like how does that affect your life? Like those are questions that I've had my entire life because it's such a different name. So like to me, like I went through the whole phase of like loving my name and hating it and like making up nicknames for my friends at school to call me versus when I was at home. Like I had a friend call home once using the nickname I had her call me at school, and my parents are like, that isn't a name of someone who lives here. And I was like, oh, no, it's my friend. So it's like, I understand like the ownership of one's name and how, if like sometimes it's hard to like accept that, and other times like it's the most important thing that other people accept that. And it was just like a really interesting theme to me.
Yeah, I think one of those things was there was an interesting portrayal of, I thought, a lot of the allure of doing the forbidden, more adult things where they touch on themes like drinking and sex, where there's sort of this stigma like she knows she's not supposed to do it according to her parents. She has a conversation with her mother about like, oh, like, should I be having sex? Sort of like to test the waters. But there was not a glamorized portrayal of this. What I appreciated about this film is that it felt like a really realistic portrayal, because I definitely grew up very sheltered, very inexperienced in all those things in middle school, high school, and there was a super big allure about it because it was forbidden, and it's always portrayed so glamorously in media, in film, in the stories you hear from friends and everything else. And sometimes when you actually do it, it's really, really underwhelming, and it really doesn't result in great experiences. And yeah, there's a moment where she finally gets everything she's wanted. She goes off to college, which was a huge struggle for her, and she goes out drinking with a friend that she's interested in hooking up with potentially, and she just starts vomiting and passes out, goes to the hospital. She looks up, just feeling like a mess, and the nurse is just like discussing, like, what am I going to do with this girl? She's just drunk. Like, how am I going to help her? She gets up the next morning in a daze, and she looks over at this kid who's got like a massive injury on his eye, and his mother's there, and they're just looking like extremely sad because he's been seriously injured, and the hospital is there to help him. And why is she there? Just because she got drunk.
Which is an added layer because her mom is a nurse.
Yeah. There's also a theme of like depression, where there's a Catholic priest who leads like the theater group, and there's also her dad, where although she doesn't have a great relationship, at least externally, with her mother, she has a great relationship with her dad. Her dad is really supportive, and the guy who's leading the theater group is also really supportive. And they're such externally happy people. But then one day, like the theater group priest, he's leading an exercise, which I assume maybe be something to do with acting, or maybe it was just like mostly volleyball. Yeah,
it was acting.
It's like first person to cry wins. And he wins almost immediately.
Yeah, like there's not even like 5 seconds of screen time between people trying to cry and him actually crying. And he was actually him and the dad, I liked a lot more
Yeah.
than some of the other characters, probably because I do struggle with depression. But it was weird because, like, from a writing standpoint, they had scenes individually with them. But again, this kind of goes back to my problem of, like, the priest has a single conversation with her mom, and she's at a psych ward. And then we never see the character ever again. And so I'm just like, well, yes, that's true to real life. Like, sometimes that happens. I feel like from like a writing standpoint, the fact that we never hear anything about his character again, I feel like that's something you cannot do in a writing standpoint. Only because it affected more than one person in her life. And in a certain way, I kind of feel like the mom's right in the fact that she is a little bit, the daughter is a little bit selfish.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Her dad has been struggling with depression for years, and I get that parents don't want to let kids know about their burdens and their problems. But it became almost like a newsflash for her. And then she had a good relationship with her dad, and like nothing, there was no added layer to her reaction to it. It was just like, oh, he has depression. It might as well have been like, oh, he bought a new shirt.
Well, I think it has a ripple effect on her throughout her character, where that starts to be where her character changes, because she's just immediately lashing out in anger. She's very frustrated. She wants to cut herself off. And I think there's several scenes where she sees how he just sort of tries to hide it internally, where like when he goes to a job interview and he doesn't get it, and they don't even entertain the possibility of giving it to him because they want a young guy. And
Which is so sad.
he's just crushed inside. But then he looks to his I think adopted son or foster son, if that's the situation.
He's adopted.
Yeah, where it turns out that he's going for that same job, and he's probably the sort of guy they're looking for. And the dad just looks at him, pats him, and he's like, you go get him. He gives him the most positive, affirming thing that he can do. And I think for one of those things, it's like when you're frustrated as a young teenager, it's because, your life is based on your experiences, and it's all a perspective thing. Like, if you haven't gone through struggles in life, to put things in perspective, the little things, the social things in high school are going to be the biggest things in the world to you. It's a matter of, I think, as you grow older, seeing what everybody else has gone through, what your parents have gone through, where you truly understand and appreciate sort of where those things are coming from.
Yeah, it went from like you only live once, like I need to go after what I know I want will make me happiest, and that even kind of ties into maybe in a way, the way that she approached it at least was that changing her name to something else because she felt like she wasn't, I'm not sure why actually. You said... Okay.
Well, actually, there was a line in about that when she was at college and a guy was asking her, or she was asking a guy, I think, like, do you believe in God? And he was like, no, that's stupid. And she's like, well, people will take the names, they'll readily use the names that other people, before they even had a chance to be born or think about it, just gave them. Like, they had no choice, but they'll just accept that name. But then I think it's stupid to believe in God. So that was a long reference.
And then she thought about it and said Christine.
Yeah. Which that was probably one of my favorite interactions that she had in the entire movie. Yeah. And I really liked that line. But
first time she called herself Christine instead of Lady Bird.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the hospital scene, again, where she wakes up and sees that little boy, she realizes she's in the hospital because of the YOLO kind of approach to life. Yeah. When really there's so many people around her suffering that, she's technically, as we believe, you're on earth to help those people and not just go and live your own way. And I think that struck her again when she saw the little boy too.
I don't feel like it was accidental that she asked about, like, do you believe in God, and fully accepted her name, like, in the same, like, one fell swoop. Because, like, the whole movie, like, it's set in like, she goes to a Catholic private school. There's a lot of Catholic background noise, I would say. It's not like hey, Catholicism, like, hey, do this, hey, this is Catholic teaching. They do have like a couple moments. I mean, it's run by nuns, they're priests.
Yeah.
They depict mass several times.
Yeah.
But like she finally, like she goes to New York, thinks she has everything she wants, goes crazy, accepts her name in the same line of just talking about how, like, do you believe in God? And then she goes to the hospital, and then she wakes up and walks to a church.
Yeah.
And it's not that she has like this miraculous conversion or reconversion to some belief. It's just she goes into the church, she finds some form of peace there, of acceptance of who she is, of her relationship with her mother and her relationship with her hometown.
Yeah.
And that's like after she's gone into the church, that's when she walks out, kind of swallows her pride in a way, and then calls her parents and says, hey mom, hey dad, it's Christine. And that I felt like was like intentional, to not necessarily be like, oh look, it's a giant powerful conversion moment in a lot, like they have in a lot of Christian films, but I felt like it was like a small conversion moment that was somehow still super important in her life.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, I guess it was just the surrender of the control of her life's plan in her way. That's when she walked into the church and, gave the reins over. You
have a plan. God laughed at it.
Yeah, I did also, I appreciated the portrayal of the Catholic school setting, because anybody who's gone to a Catholic school can immediately find it relatable. There were so many little tiny things. I only went to a Catholic school for 2 years, but just going to a Catholic college still, and just like all the little references, they got it all right. Nothing was done like really ignorantly or disrespectfully.
Yeah.
It wasn't portrayed like, oh, they weren't trying to pander. They weren't trying to be negative. It was the setting.
It was.
Yeah.
And I loved the nun.
Yeah.
I've been married to Jesus for 40 years, by the way.
When she vandalizes her car, just married to Jesus, she's like, well, I've been married for 40 years.
He's a lucky guy.
Yeah, that's great. So we've been talking about how we loved or were unimpressed by the movie or whatnot. So if you do go to see it, just bear in mind, like, yes, there are a lot of, Catholic things in it that are kind of cool to see, like the nun I was talking about I liked. And there are things also that should be, just a precaution. There are scenes that are not age appropriate.
It would be irresponsible of us to not bring up, because it is a rated R film, and it is I wouldn't say necessarily a hard R, but they earned that R.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Basically, it's with all the relationships she goes through. Just bears.
There's foul language. There's dirty jokes. There's portrayals of relationship. There's not particularly lots of nudity, except for one part where she's looking at a magazine, and they do show it. So if you're looking for that, you will see it. But basically,
it's a very realistic portrayal.
It's realistic, yeah.
I'm sure you'll know people who talk like this, who act like this.
And again, the thing for me about it wasn't really glorified either. It was a very harsh, in many ways, portrayal of a lot of the things of like, hey, these things aren't all that great sometimes when you actually do them. They're just kind of mediocre, or they just straight up suck.
I like how they tied it into those people being the ones that were living their way. Yeah. Were these people who just ended up making her like kind of dramatic or just crummy. So that was another way she saw like, I don't like this lifestyle. These people don't care.
Yeah.
All right. So final thoughts, Zaira, in a nutshell, would you recommend it?
I don't know. I probably would say I'd give it like a C. Like, it's not anything spectacular in my life experience, but I could see other people enjoying it. But it also isn't bad. So kind of just like, I guess it would depend on who I'm talking to if I feel like it would matter to them.
Yeah. Mark?
I'm always a person who would recommend a movie, unless it's just absolutely terrible, which this movie is not. It's just keep your expectations manageable. Don't go in thinking that this is the greatest movie of all time. Just keep them moderate.
Yeah, there are people I would recommend it to, for sure, out there. I wouldn't recommend it to absolutely everyone, especially because it's a very, very good portrayal of some of the struggles in life, and so I would bear in mind like who I'm recommending the movie to. And then Other than that, it's rated R, so I would recommend it
Yeah.
to people who would be okay with that as well. And
Yeah,
I think it's good.
Again,
So.
yeah, I think that's basically where I thought it was a really good film. Again, on like the grade scale, if I was giving it a grade, I think I would give it an A. I wouldn't give it like the A+ of like, oh, it's the greatest movie ever, like the maybe the 100% rating or Rotten Tomatoes or like all the hype might give it. But it was still a very solid film, great film. In my book, it touches on a lot of different things. So if you relate to a lot of the things in the movie, which there's a good chance you might, since it touches on so many different things, I think you'll get a lot out of it. But again, because of the hard content nature, if that's something that would be personally just uncomfortable for you, obviously then don't see it. And yeah, I think that's basically it. So thank you so much for watching another New Catholic Generation movie review. If you have more suggestions on movies that you would like us to review, please leave them in the comments below. And also, before we go, we have one more thing to bring up that Zaira and Marc would like to talk about.
Okay.
All right. So if you've watched the first Advent Reflections video, you've already seen the initial advertisement for this, but we are participating in a Catholic YouTuber mission campaign thing with Mary's Meals. We're trying to fundraise $5,000 between now and Christmas. Mary's Meals is a ministry that provides food for children in third world countries at schools, which encourages them to be able to go to school. But generally, we're just trying to fundraise for the sake of charity during this holiday season, giving back to the less fortunate, doing your last minute tithing if you haven't finished.
Any little bit helps.
Yeah, and every dollar raised will be matched by
An
a donor
anonymous-
on the site.
Yeah. So if you donate $1, technically you're donating $2, which is always nice. So, but yes.
Yeah, so look for that in the description box below.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. God
Bye.
bless.
Bye.